This is Stephen Zucker with Beth Harris. We're in the Portland Art Museum, and we're looking at Robert Colescott's 1979 painting, Beauty is in the Eye of the Beholder.
And so we see the artist, I presume, looking very artisty in pants covered in paint and slippers in his studio. And he's sitting in front of a copy that he's done, it looks like, of Matisse's painting of the dance.
But he's not looking at the painting.
No. And there's a model behind him, and she looks like she's disrobing or getting dressed.
Well, hold on for just a moment, because there's so many layers of reference here. It's just enormously complicated, because we assume that she's a model because she's either dressing or disrobing, and she's in the artist's studio, so of course, I mean, one thinks about the studio by Courbet, for instance, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's something sort of very racy about the way that she's been represented.
Well, but artist models sort of had that reputation, right? I mean, going back, or you couldn't easily go and ask, like, your mother and her friends to go and undress for you, so you could. You had to, you had to get a woman of a kind of lower class who would need the money and
fair enough, but that's contrast against the actual nudes that are being or I shouldn't say actual, but the nudes that are being represented by Matisse, and so that's the allowable nudity, as opposed to something that's sort of far less comfortable and made even less comfortable because of the race issues here in the American tradition, right? Of a white woman and a black man,
right?
And I think that's something that's clearly.
But it just occurred to me that this is a take on Seurat's painting of the models, the posers, where he's got the Grand Jatte in his studio.
Absolutely.
And he's got the models dressing. And actually, I think they're putting on their stockings, and her stockings are so obvious.
So what does it mean to create a painting in 1979 that is a kind of, that just references like mad the history of art? And what does it mean to look at a painting like this with or without that art historical knowledge? It's a very sort of wonderfully straightforward canvas. In a way, it's painted in a very direct kind of manner and beautiful, and there's a real sense of sort of openness to the way that it's referenced, but it's also sort of playful in the way that it's painted, and yet it's also sort of presuming this really deep knowledge of art history.
Yeah, but I'm wondering how much you need of it. An African-American artist, I think there's sort of enough in our culture to sort of get this, even without all that art history. We all know that most of the people who are in Janssen's history of art are white men, and that until very recently they didn't include stuff from other cultures or works by women. And then you have this African-American artist, so, prominent in the center, turning away from the Matisse, but also sort of, I don't know, how do you read this gesture? And then, the woman who looks like a hooker. I think there's enough here that you sort of get it without all the art history. But what do you think about his gesture? That's the puzzle to me.
I think he is looking at us almost as if he's discerning or critiquing our view, our gaze. Yeah. That's right, and I think that's really fascinating.
Well, he's like, because the title, of course, is "Beauty is in the Eye of the Beholder," and he's looking at us, and we're beholding him. But we're also looking at the woman who looks kind of racy, and we're also looking at this icon of the Western canon.
Not to mention,
what do we find beautiful? Where does beauty lie? Why do we hold beauty in certain places and not in others?
And perhaps is even the art historical referencing somehow an impediment to, in a sense, the capturing of beauty, or is it some way a kind of focusing or distilling of that beauty? In other words, does it help or hinder?
Does what help or hinder? I missed
in a sense, all of the references to art history. I'm looking at Jasper Johns. It's just the painting is completely full of art historical reference.
Right, and in the paint can. You saw the Johns.
That's right, exactly right.
Yeah. And there, of course, there's a long tradition of artists in their studio, right?
I love it.
Me too.